Every trip should be a memory, a breath of freedom, a moment to feel alive, far from the weight of home. But sometimes, a trip becomes something else, a place where trust cracks, where stories splinter, and where the truth hides in the shadows between what's said and what's never explained. On October 28, 2022, a 25-year-old entrepreneur from Charlotte stepped into a luxury villa in Cabo San José, surrounded by people she believed were her friends, people she trusted. Within 24 hours, she would be gone. No warning, no clear answers, just a phone call home, a claim of alcohol poisoning, and a silence that felt wrong from the very beginning. Days later, something would surface that shattered that story and ignited a fight for answers across two countries. Tonight, we unravel the final hours of Shanquella Robinson, the contradictions, the questions, the international battle for justice, and the truth hidden inside a villa that should have been a peaceful getaway. This is Timeline Unfolded, where every story is brought to light. Before anything that happened in Cabo, before the headlines, the questions, the outrage, there was a young woman named Shanquella Bernada Robinson. She was born on January 9, 1997, in Charlotte, North Carolina, a winter baby raised in a warm, close-knit family that loved her deeply. She grew up in the neighborhoods of Charlotte, surrounded by people who watched her evolve from a bright, curious child into a young woman with ambition, creativity, and heart. She graduated from West Charlotte High School, a milestone her family celebrated with pride. From there, she continued her education at Winston-Salem State University, an HBCU, a place where she shaped friendships, built confidence, and began imagining her future. But what truly defined her was not a diploma. It was her drive. While many people her age were still searching for direction, Shanquella was already building something real. She launched Exquisite Kids, a children's hair braiding business where little girls sat in her chair and left feeling proud, seen, and beautiful. She later expanded her vision with Exquisite Boutique, a women's fashion brand she curated with care and style. These weren't hobbies. They were the early chapters of a young Black entrepreneur choosing her own path, creating opportunities instead of waiting for them. To her mother, Salamandra, and her sister, Quilla, she was steady, loving, dependable, the kind of daughter and sister who checked in, who cared, who brought light wherever she went. To her community, she was the girl with the warm smile, the gentle confidence, the effortless ability to make others feel comfortable and seen. And to the people in her circle, she was loyal, trusting, genuine. Among those people was Khalil Cook, a friend she'd known for years, someone trusted enough to be welcomed inside her family's home, someone who joined them at gatherings, someone they believed would look out for her. At 25 years old, Shanquella stood on the edge of everything she had worked to build. Her business is growing, her future opening, her life settling into a rhythm of possibility. So when she packed her bags for a weekend getaway in late October of 2022, a trip to Cabo San José with people she knew from college and her social circle, it felt natural, deserved. A break she had earned through years of hard work. She left Charlotte with excitement, with trust, with the expectation that this trip would be exactly what so many of us hope for when we travel with friends. A memory, but the memory she hoped to create would become something else entirely. A moment her family never could have imagined. A story the world still struggles to understand. A life full of promise, cut short far from home. And to understand what happened in Cabo, you must first understand her, because everything that follows is about a daughter, a sister, a friend, whose life mattered long before the headlines did. Late October in Charlotte carries a soft shift, the kind where fall hasn't fully arrived, but summer feels just far enough away to miss. For Shanquella, the timing couldn't have been better. She'd been working hard, balancing two businesses, navigating the day-to-day grind that comes with building something from nothing. A trip to Mexico felt like a breath she'd earned. The plan was simple: a weekend getaway in Cabo San José, a luxury villa, sunlight, celebration, and a group of people she knew from college and her social circle. People she believed were safe. People she believed were friends. On October 28, 2022, Shanquella boarded her flight. Excited, dressed for warmth and beaches, unaware that this trip would never become the memory she expected. Hours later, the group arrived at Villa Linda 32, a stunning property tucked inside a gated resort community. White walls, palm shadows, the kind of place built for relaxation and perfect photos. A place that should have felt like paradise. Inside that villa were the 6 people she traveled with. A group the world would later come to know as the Cabo Six. Khalil Cook, her longtime friend that trusted by her family, welcomed in their home. Malik St. Patrick Dyer, Wenner Essence Donovan, Elise Michelle Hyatt, Nazir Wiggins, and Dejanay Jackson, who would later appear in court documents under the name Imani Green. They unpacked, settled in, and did what travelers do: wandered the villa, claimed rooms, joked, prepared for the night ahead. Before anything went wrong, before the tension, the contradictions, the unanswered questions, there's a moment caught on camera. A short video, filmed inside the villa on the day they arrived.
Naked. It don't take that long to get naked. It don't take that long to get naked, hoes. Where y'all at? She told me I'm gonna keep it hot. You gonna keep it hot? What?
I would keep my hot bathing suits that I don't want to wear because it's cute as fuck.
They, what Go said, they croup.
Yeah. the one that's like mediocre is in my check-ins. I can't wear them.
In it, Shanquella is walking through the rooms, laughing, searching for the others. She calls out playfully, "It don't take that long to get naked. Where y'all at?" Her voice is light, warm, completely unaware of what the next day would bring. She isn't afraid. She isn't suspicious. She isn't tense. She's simply a 25-year-old woman on vacation with people she believes are her friends. For a few seconds, that clip feels like any other travel memory, the kind we've all filmed, the kind we never imagine will be the last of someone's life. But when you watch it now, knowing what happens within the next 24 hours, the moment feels different. The villa looks different. Their laughter sounds different. Every doorway, every shadow, every silent room suddenly carries weight. Because this is the final footage of Shanquella alive and unhurt, a snapshot of innocence taken inside the same place where everything would soon go terribly wrong. They were only hours into the trip, and already something unseen was shifting under the surface. Small changes in energy, moments that wouldn't make sense until later, dynamics that would unravel everything that followed. Shanquella arrived in Cabo on a Friday afternoon, and by Saturday evening, she would be dead. The hours between those two moments tell a story the world still struggles to understand. A story pieced together through medical reports, conflicting statements, fragments of video, and the silence of the people who were with her. But the truth of what happened in that villa begins here, with a trip meant for celebration that was already turning into something else. Something darker, something she never saw coming. Saturday morning in Cabo should have felt like any other vacation sunrise. Soft light spilling into the villa, quiet footsteps moving between rooms, the promise of a day unfolding in warmth and celebration. But inside Villa Linda 32, something felt different. We don't know exactly when that shift happened. We don't know what changed, or why the energy inside the villa darkened so quickly. But by the time morning turned to afternoon, there were signs, small, subtle, that something wasn't right. What began the night before with drinks, music, and laughter had settled into tension, unease, a heaviness that didn't match a weekend getaway. Sometime that day, in one of the villa's bedrooms, a confrontation occurred, one that would later become central to the investigation. Its details were not immediately known to her family, and they were not reported to authorities in Mexico when help was first requested. What we do have is the medical timeline, a precise record of the final hours of Shanquella Robinson's life. The medical timeline, 2:13 p.m. A local concierge doctor is called to the villa. The group reports that Shanquella has been drinking heavily and needs treatment for alcohol intoxication. 3:15 p.m., doctor arrives. The doctor finds Shanquella alive, but in severe distress, barely responsive, unable to speak, struggling neurologically. The doctor recommends hospital care, but according to medical documentation, the group declines hospital transfer, requesting she be treated inside the villa instead. 4:20 p.m., her condition worsens, seizures begin. Emergency services are finally called. 4:49 p.m., CPR begins, paramedics attempt resuscitation. 5:57 p.m., pronounced dead. Inside a luxury villa thousands of miles from home, surrounded not by her mother or sister, but by the 6 people she believed were her friends. Shanquella takes her last breath. She is 25 years old. What happened next raised more questions than answers, according to the group's statements to her family and the early reports they gave to authorities. They said Shanquella had died from alcohol poisoning. There was no mention of a physical altercation, no mention of injuries, no mention that anything violent had occurred. Her mother recalls that when they called her that day, they described a tragic medical emergency, nothing more. But as later evidence would show, the story they shared in those first hours did not align with the autopsy or the information that would soon emerge. Within hours of her death, members of the group began preparing to return to the United States. They left before the full investigation began. They left without Shanquella's body, and they left while her family still believed she had simply become sick on vacation. Her mother remembers them coming into her living room after returning to Charlotte, bringing luggage, offering condolences, repeating the story of alcohol poisoning. But nothing about her daughter's condition or the timeline made sense. Still, the family had no reason to believe otherwise. Not yet, because the truth, the part the world would soon see, had not surfaced. And when it did, everything changed. In the days after her death, the only explanation her family had was the one they were told: alcohol poisoning. But when Shanquella's body arrived home in Charlotte, her mother saw injuries that didn't match the story she'd been given. Still, they waited for the official autopsy, the report that would finally tell the truth. The Mexico autopsy revealed catastrophic injuries: a broken neck, a severe spinal cord injury, atlas luxation, a fatal dislocation of the vertebrae at the top of the spine. Cause of death: severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation. Not alcohol, not sudden illness, not an accident. The findings suggested a violent cause, and the family realized immediately that the story they'd been told did not match the evidence. But the truth still wasn't done unfolding. Weeks after her funeral, a video surfaced online. A video the family had never been told existed. In it, Shanquella is in a bedroom, sitting on the floor, not fighting back, not defending herself. Another woman hits her repeatedly, and a male voice behind the camera says, "Quella, can you at least fight back?" She doesn't. She can't. The clip is seconds long, but enough to ignite a fire across social media, across communities, across the entire country. It contradicted everything the family had been told. It contradicted the group's accounts. It contradicted the explanation given to authorities. And suddenly the world was watching. Millions demanded answers. Millions demanded justice. Millions asked the same question: how could this happen on a trip with friends? The alcohol poisoning story collapsed instantly, and pressure mounted on law enforcement in both Mexico and the United States. The Mexican government reclassified Shanquella's death as femicide, stating publicly that her autopsy findings were consistent with a violent attack. An arrest warrant was issued for a U.S. woman believed to be responsible. The name was not publicly released, but the video circulating online led to widespread speculation. Mexico formally requested extradition, but across the border the United States was conducting its own investigation, and the results would not match. The American autopsy conducted after her body was returned home did not confirm the spinal cord injuries reported by Mexico. It listed her cause of death as undetermined. 2 autopsies, 2 findings, 2 countries trying to interpret the same tragedy through different forensic lenses. The case was now caught in a legal and scientific tug-of-war, one that would define everything that came next. And for Shanquella's family, the question became painfully clear. If there's video, if there's an autopsy, if there's a warrant, why has no one been arrested? There were 6 people who traveled with Shanquella Robinson to Cabo San José. They were the last people to see her alive. Khalil Cook, Malik St. Patrick Dyer, Winter Essence Donovan, Elise Michelle Hyatt, Nazir Wiggins, and Dejanay Jackson, who would later appear in court documents under the name Imani Green. For most families, an autopsy, a video, and a publicly announced arrest warrant would mean the case was moving forward. But for Shanquella Robinson, those pieces did not lead to handcuffs. Instead, they opened the door to something far more complicated, a fight between two legal systems with two different standards of evidence and two different conclusions about how she died. And her family was suddenly caught in the middle. After reviewing the autopsy and investigative findings, Mexican authorities were clear. They believed a serious crime had occurred inside Villa Linda 32. They classified her death as femicide, a gender-motivated killing under Mexican law. They announced that their investigation had identified one U.S. citizen as the person believed to be responsible. The name was not released publicly by investigators, but officials confirmed an arrest warrant was issued. Mexico then took the next step. They formally requested extradition from the United States. For Shanquella's family, it seemed like justice was finally moving. But justice in one country does not guarantee justice in another, because the United States would conduct its own independent review and reach a very different conclusion. The FBI opened a federal investigation, reviewing medical records, interviews, the viral video, and forensic findings. But their internal review relied heavily on the U.S. autopsy, which listed Shanquella's cause of death as undetermined and did not confirm the spinal cord injury reported by Mexico. Federal prosecutors then made a statement that stunned the family and the public. They announced that no federal charges would be filed, stating there was insufficient evidence to prove a crime under U.S. law. This did not mean nothing happened. It did not mean Mexico was wrong. It did not mean the video was dismissed. It meant that without matching forensic conclusions and without the ability to establish certain legal elements beyond a reasonable doubt, the Department of Justice could not meet the standards required for prosecution in the U.S. And because no American citizen can be extradited unless the U.S. approves it, the case reached a standstill. Mexico was ready to move forward. The United States was not, and Shanquella's family was left with no clear path to justice. To the public, the video seemed undeniable. To Mexico, the autopsy appeared conclusive. To U.S. prosecutors, the conflicting medical findings created what they described as a fatal evidentiary gap. Two documents, done in two countries, had now become the dividing line between an arrest and a case that could not proceed. And because the United States does not prosecute cases based solely on events abroad without meeting federal thresholds, they declined to bring charges. The result? A legal and scientific stalemate that left the family with answers from neither side. In April 2023 and again in 2024, federal officials met with the family and released a public statement explaining their decision. They acknowledged the loss. They acknowledged the public concern, but they reiterated that the evidence available did not support prosecution in a U.S. court. For the family, those words did not bring closure. They brought devastation. Because even with an arrest warrant in Mexico, even with global attention, the United States legal position meant the case could not move forward. Dozens of civil rights groups, public advocates, and private attorneys began calling for a stronger federal review, a diplomatic agreement, a special envoy, a reconsideration of extradition among. But the legal hurdle remains the same. The U.S. cannot extradite a citizen for charges they have not independently validated. And Mexico cannot prosecute someone who never returns to their soil. Two countries, two systems, both acknowledging a tragedy occurred, neither able to advance the case without the other's cooperation. For the family, justice is still suspended between two governments and two incompatible findings. For the Robinson family, the heartbreak is not only the loss itself, but the silence that followed. No arrests, no trial, no resolution. Just a daughter gone, a family grieving, and two nations unable to answer the one question they ask every day. If not here, and not there, then where does justice exist for Shanquella Robinson? By 2023, the world knew Shanquella Robinson's name. They knew the viral video, they knew the contradictions, they knew a family was fighting two governments for answers. But after the United States declined federal charges, a new question emerged. What happens now? Because Mexico still had a warrant, the U.S. still had a closed file, and the family still had no accountability. This is where the story enters the most complicated chapter, the one playing out right now. Shanquella's mother, her sister Quilla, and attorney Benjamin Crump continued pushing the U.S. government to revisit or clarify its position. They held press conferences. They traveled to Washington, D.C. They met with the Department of Justice. They demanded transparency. Their message stayed consistent. If Mexico has enough evidence for a warrant, why doesn't the United States? But the DOJ reiterated its stance. The U.S. autopsy findings, listing cause of death as undetermined, did not meet the burden required for federal charges. For the family, it meant living inside a legal gap no parent should ever have to understand. In 2024, the family filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against several members of the Cabo 6. Civil court is not criminal court. It does not assign guilt. It does not send anyone to prison. But it allows families to seek answers, testimony, and accountability when criminal charges are not available. The lawsuit laid out the timeline from the family's perspective. Their claims about the trip, the injuries, the statements made afterward. The defendants named in the suit denied wrongdoing. As of 2025, the lawsuit is ongoing, moving slowly through procedural steps that could take years. But for the Robinson family, it is one of the only avenues left to force information into the light. Mexican authorities have not withdrawn their arrest warrant. They have reiterated publicly that they stand by their autopsy findings and their classification of the case as femicide. They continue to express readiness to prosecute in Mexican courts if the United States extradites the suspect. But without federal U.S. charges, extradition remains stalled. This standoff has not changed. The Department of Justice stated that their investigation is complete. The evidence does not support federal charges. They cannot proceed without the ability to meet the criminal burden of proof. This does not mean the case can never be reopened. Federal cases can be revisited if new evidence emerges or if forensic interpretations change. But as of 2025, no new public findings have been released. Civil rights organizations, social justice groups, and thousands of online supporters have continued pushing for a diplomatic agreement, further federal review, congressional action, a special investigation into the handling of the case. Petitions with hundreds of thousands of signatures have circulated through 2023 and 2024. Members of Congress have sent letters urging the DOJ to release more details about how their decision was reached. But publicly, the federal position has not changed. Her story began long before that villa in Cabo, before the headlines, before the videos, before two countries argued over what happened to her. It began in Charlotte, in a house filled with laughter, ambition, and dreams bigger than the world she grew up in. Shanquella Robinson was more than a case. She was a daughter who FaceTimed her mother just to say, "I love you." A sister who never missed a chance to uplift the people she cared about. A friend who brought joy into every room she entered. A young woman building a brand, building a life, building a future. And she should still be here. That is the part the investigations can't measure. The part no autopsy can explain. The part no legal document can capture. When she boarded that flight to Mexico, she believed she was traveling with people she could trust. People she'd known for years. People she thought would celebrate with her, laugh with her, come home with her. But she didn't come home. And two nations, with two different findings and two different systems, still have not answered the one question that matters most. How could this happen? And why has no one been held accountable? Her mother's voice still cracks every time she says her daughter's name. Her sister still fights because she refuses to let Shanquella become a hashtag lost in the noise of the internet. Her community still gathers because they believe justice is not a privilege that should depend on borders or bureaucracy. They believe that a life as bright as hers cannot end in silence. And as the years pass, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, the world continues to watch. Not because the case is solved, but because it isn't. Not because the answers are clear, but because they remain painfully out of reach. The fight for Shanquella Robinson is now a fight for something bigger, for clarity, for accountability, for a system that does not leave families stranded between two governments and two contradictory truths. Her story is a reminder that justice is not only found in the courtroom, it is found in persistence, in community, in the people who refuse to let her name fade from the conversations that matter. Because somewhere, someone knows what really happened in that villa. Somewhere, there is a truth that has not yet been spoken, and until that truth comes forward, her story remains unfinished. This is not the end. Not for her family, not for her community, not for anyone still paying attention. This is Timeline Unfolded, where every story, every life, every unanswered question is brought into the light. And tonight, we remember the woman at the center of it all, Shanquella Robinson, a daughter, a friend, a light, a life that should still be here. May her story never be forgotten, and may the truth, one day, finally come home.